Goes back to New York City in the early 90s and mid 90s. So basically what we're trying to do is, through this brand, I own Harris Web Works, that's my agency, but what I realized is that there was a disconnect between the industry of technology and the businesses that need technology to help their businesses. And there's a lot of like people talking in this silo of technology and in industry owners that are like, I have no idea what they're talking about. So for me, the way to understand things is through stories and kind of repeating some of those stories and breaking it down into bites that people can digest. And then building a community of people that want to tell these stories so people can learn and get informed and then make decisions that will help their businesses. And particularly to hear stories about businesses that have gone through a process to transform themselves that's been successful or hard or challenging, but they've come out the other side. And I think those stories are in particular really helpful for everyone to hear. So Verado is essentially, it's a hub for telling stories, in-person events, online content, we have a podcast, and then partnership, which is like anybody that wants to come and join. We are agnostic, we are non-biased, we don't care what company you are. If Microsoft has a product that's good for business, we want to hear that story. If Oracle has one, if Adobe has one, we are completely agnostic. That's the problem with the tech industry in general, is that sometimes you'll talk to a practitioner of tech and they'll sell you on their solution instead of saying, but there's all these other solutions too. So Verado is where you can come and hear about all the solutions. And that's why it's not under Harris Web Works, it's Verado. We're not beholden to anybody. There's nobody paying us to tell their story versus somebody else's. It's completely agnostic. And then this is our podcast. So if you want to follow what we're doing, a lot of the speakers that are here today have already been on my podcast. So this is kind of how we're starting to generate some momentum around the brand is through these incremental storytelling. So my talk, to put context around the bigger picture of why you're here. So that's Verado. What today's talk is Industry 4.0 and digital transformation and trying to get an idea of what these things mean. So Industry 4.0, to start off with, is just a way of frameworking that we've gone through these stages, 4 of them now defined, of industrialization. The first time we even started talking about these stages, now some people might disagree with me, this is also like fluid. So there's no like, it stopped here for sure and it started here. It's just a general sense that there was this big thing that happened and then another phase that happened and a third and a fourth. But in terms of the context, one of the first published books identifying 3.0 was this guy, Jeremy Rifkin, and it was only in 2011. So think like 13 years ago, this is a concept that we've only really kind of started to think about with these stages. And then 4 or 5 years later, they're already talking about 4.0. So it was like within 4 years, what is Industry 3.0? Oh, wait, now we're already into 4.0. So then now there's just been a ton of buzz around this. And I'm just going to give you the kind of big picture context about what they're all talking about. So the first stage was the 1700s. We went from agrarian to industrial in some parts of the world. We started mechanizing things and building stuff with steam power and iron and canals and roads. And then we got into the big one. This is 2. We started building internal combustion machines. We started doing steel instead of iron. And we just started building bigger, more powerful things, assembly lines. This was a massive century-long buildup until I kind of roughly say nuclear power was kind of the peak, kind of the end of that phase. And the next phase really started with this. Now, the transistor was in the 40s and 50s, but the idea of using computers really took off in the later part of the 1900s, and it had to do with digital transmission of content. By the way, a lot of this stuff has to do with not just the mechanisms of building things, but how we transport things and how we move information back and forth. So it's not just material stuff, it's information is a big part of this too. So these phases are actually changing the way we communicate as well. This was a big one. And this was the industry 3.0, which arguably we're still in now. So we're all still kind of in 3.0. And then I would say late stage 3.0, depending on who you talk to, mobile phones and cloud computing were kind of like, that was kind of like the nuclear weapon of the previous stage. It's like we got to this thing and we're starting to build an infrastructure. So now everyone has access to the infrastructure in their pocket. And cloud computing means that we can all talk to each other on these servers that are spread around the world. So this is like the kind of final last pass of Industry 3.0. We're still in it now, we're still building it. But this becomes essentially an infrastructure. So cloud computing and mobile phones and computers are all an infrastructure on how we're communicating and trading today. So 4.0 is kind of what we're building on top of that, which is advanced cloud computing, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, advanced robotics, 3D printing, blockchain, Bitcoin, all that crazy stuff, augmented reality, digital twins. So you're building a digital copy of your manufacturing facility, let's say. So there's a bunch of stuff that people will get into with like biotech that I didn't include. I didn't think it was relevant for this, but that's essentially 4.0. And another thing that's interesting to think about is what they call exponential technology. So things tend to move slowly a century ago, and it might take a while for households to get into refrigeration or households to adopt to new technologies. But all of a sudden, you start to see new technologies come and they get adopted really fast. So like the mobile phone is a classic, the smartphone is a classic example of like, nobody had them and then 2 years later, everybody had them. And this is another graph to just show you like, this is essentially like industry 1, and then you've got industry 2, and then you can see the exponential growth. So what we've done in the last 50 years, the pace at which we're changing things is like nothing we've ever seen in the 2 previous centuries. And that's just getting faster. Like it or not, right? It is accelerating at a dramatic speed. So businesses need to be aware of this. Like, you don't want to be stuck here when everybody else is up here. Like the transformation is happening, like it or not. So one of the metaphors I like to use is if you think about infrastructure and the way that we trade and communicate. In the early 1900s, or before World War I, you were still using a lot of horses to transport goods. By the 20s, we started to add automotive transportation for goods. So General Motors claimed that a truck could replace 16 horses and 4 wagons. And by the 1920s, trucks were the dominant form. And basically, people that were nostalgic for this old way of doing it, they didn't survive. And, you know, I love horses. I could totally be nostalgic for this. I think there's something incredibly romantic about it. But people have to get real. Like, the world's changing. So it doesn't change to meet what we want. It changes despite what we want. And that's the reality, unfortunately. So this happened, and there were a lot of companies, you know, building buggies in the early 1900s that kept doing the same thing the way they always have, and they're no longer in business. So companies continue to rely on horses for delivery, and by the 30s, they increased challenges, and they eventually just went out of business. So food for thought. And this is one of my favorite quotes. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So metaphor, right? So this is where we're at. So another thing, this is something that where we're at today, I think this is a story. So this robot that Google built, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this story. They thought AI would never be able to be a master at this game called Go. And in 2016, Google built an AI machine, and it consistently beat the best humans in the world at a game they thought was too complex for AI to figure out. And AI figured it out. And now there's they don't even have a chance. The humans don't have a chance. The computers are way better at this game, and it was kind of like the last hurdle. Big Blue had already beat humans at chess, but they thought, oh, they'll never beat them at Go. And what the computers do is they learn millions of games against themselves. This showcased AI's ability to handle tasks requiring creativity and strategic thinking. So basically, the robots are better than humans at some stuff. Again, I'm nostalgic for horses. I like the horses, right? But this is where we're going. All right, so what are the core technologies? I'm going to just like break it down into, Industry 4.0, 3.0. Again, I kind of went through this, but it's optimized individual processes versus emphasizing connectivity and data analytics. So it's instead of like building a static automation that works in your factory, it's about taking the data that's in the factory and making it making it open to other systems and other partners, but also merging it with your other data that you might have in your business. So you de-silo your data. So Industry 3 versus Industry 4, core technologies, automation versus autonomy, data usage, supply chain. I'm just going to hit those 5 points real quick. So often, so 3.0, often requiring human supervision, and they were not interconnected, versus this is automation versus autonomy. 4.0, machines self-optimize, learn, make decisions with minimal input. That's where we're going. And the same thing with data usage. It's about kind of de-siloing. So 3.0 was limited data collection. Real-time feedback was minimal. And if you guys will read fast, I'll let you read it. I won't read the whole thing to you. But data in 4.0, data is continuously collected, analyzed, and shared across the organization. Supply chain, again, 3.0 stuff was more siloed. Supply chain now, interconnected networks. Distributors, manufacturers are talking to each other. They're sharing their data. They're looking at their inventory levels. They're real-time price checking. That's Industry 4.0. Predictive models. So once your data is all in one place and it's real-time and you're collecting it in real time, now you can leverage AI to look for patterns. And that, again, the intelligence of AI will be able to give you potentially better outcomes once you have all that data. And so to summarize, while Industry 3.0 centered around localized automation and early IT systems, 4.0 was creating fully connected, intelligent ecosystems that leverage data, advanced technologies to achieve smarter, more autonomous and agile manufacturing. So essentially it's like, things are more connected, they're smarter, you're constantly collecting it as de-siloed, and you're talking to your partners. So that moving from 2.0 to 3.0 to where we are now, we have to start thinking about our businesses as not necessarily machines. We used to think very linear, and we used a lot of metaphors that were based on like what your business as a machine. And I think the new way of thinking is to think more of your business as a digital organism. Because you're changing the way that you modify your business, I think the metaphors can also help. So your businesses are more like a digital organism. So what is digital transformation? It's getting businesses fully up to date on late stage Industry 3.0, that's cloud computing, so that they can benefit from massive 4.0 opportunities. So there's opportunities that are coming with 4.0. They're here today, but they're going to change, and we don't know exactly what those are going to look like for every business and for every entity, but we have to be prepared to take advantage of them. That's the big takeaway, I think. Transforming businesses from mechanical entities to digital organisms. Again, I said that, digital transformation. So next steps, and this is my last slide, so I'll take a second here. Basically, what I said already is get your business data into a modern cloud-based ERP. One that can easily share data with other systems, suppliers, distributors, through third parties, marketing and customer data. Get it kind of all together in one cloud-based modern system, and unsilo your data. And then constantly work to improve the quality of the data and the sophistication of the reporting. Leverage AI when it makes sense. But these are the kind of big ones. Because this has to do with your mindset. Develop a mindset of continual growth. Set your key performance indicators, measure and improve. And then establish a reasonable digital budget. So you're going to have to be investing in this and continue to invest in it because things are moving fast. You need to be adapting. So understand, instead of what a one-time budget is, what does a continual annual digital budget look like? Invest in improvement and growth, and revise the one-time investment mindset and replace it with continual improvement and investment. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to abandon technologies that aren't helping you. Avoid stagnation and do your homework. So if you're here, congratulations, you're doing your homework. Work with partners. Hey, so there's some partners here. It's critical but not urgent. Don't rush it. So that's the other thing. Like those slides and some of that stuff is kind of scary, right? Oh my God, if I don't change my business, I'm gonna, I could potentially fail. That's not what I'm trying to say, nor do I think that's a healthy mindset. What you need to know is that you need to be paying attention to this, but you don't have to do it all at once. So you have to be intentional, consistent, and disciplined, and it's not a one-time fix. So essentially it's, know this is happening, stay informed, don't freak out, talk to people, find people that can help you, listen to the stories, and know that there's big changes coming, but by being aware of them, you can use them to your advantage. And I will say one more thing for small businesses, because I advocate for small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. We do not work on enterprise businesses. I've made a choice in my agency side not to do that because I think the big corporations already have a lot of help. They have big consulting companies helping them. The small and medium-sized businesses are the ones that maybe might be missing some of the information they need. But the advantage of being small is that you're nimble and you're agile and you can move fast. The big corporations are sometimes very hard to move. But big businesses that know what's going on and are aware of opportunities that maybe didn't exist for them 10 years ago can pivot. So I think this, as scary as this is, there's tons of opportunities for small businesses to take advantage and find new markets, change the way they're working, become more agile, become more automated. So I wouldn't necessarily be afraid. I think it's more of just be aware. And that's it. See, that wasn't too bad, right? All right. So